For 12 years, our marriage was a perfectly balanced formula. I was a sommelier, a man who made a living dissecting the notes of decay and fermentation in expensive bottles. My wife, Camille, was a perfumer, a nose for a high-end fragrance house. We lived in a world of heightened senses. Our home was a sanctuary of olfactory purity, free from harsh detergents or cheap candles. We existed in a curated atmosphere of cedar wood, amber, and silence. There was a profound architectural stability to us. In perfumery, the base note is the scent that lingers longest, the heavy molecules that anchor the fragrance after the top notes have evaporated. Camille was my base note. She was the musk and the sandalwood. She was the heavy, grounding presence that kept me from floating away. We understood each other without speaking. I could taste her mood in the way she seasoned the soup. She could smell my anxiety in the pheromones radiating from my skin after a long service. It was an intimacy bordering on telepathy. We were distilled, concentrated, and rare. We were an acquired taste, perhaps, but we were undeniably valuable. 2. Olfactory fatigue. The problem with a perfect scent is that eventually you stop smelling it. It's a biological phenomenon called olfactory fatigue, or nose blindness. The brain filters out the constant stimuli to focus on the new. The drift began not with malice, but with a loss of signal. I would come home to the scent of her, that complex, sophisticated blend of iris and old books, and I would feel nothing. No comfort, no spark, just a neutral data point. She is here. I began to crave a disruption. The precision of our life, once a source of pride, started to feel sterile. I sat in our pristine living room, watching her analyze a strip of blotting paper with focused intensity, and I wanted to open a window. I wanted the smell of exhaust, of rain on hot asphalt, of something dirty and unrefined. "Is the bergamot too sharp?" she asked one evening, wafting the strip under my nose. "It's perfect," I lied. "It's always perfect, Camille." She lowered the strip, her eyes narrowing slightly. She heard the flatness in my voice, the lack of resonance. But she didn't press. She simply bottled the sample and put it away, sealing the lid tight, as if she could preserve the moment before it soured. 3. The synthetic accord. Her name was Ro. She wasn't a connoisseur of anything. She was a bartender at a dive bar I stopped at after work to avoid going home. She smelled of cheap vanilla body spray, cigarette smoke, and lime juice. It was a synthetic, cloying, loud scent. Everything Camille despised. And I was addicted to it. The affair didn't start with a touch. It started with the shock to my palate. Ro was easy. She laughed with her mouth open. She drank cheap beer. She didn't analyze the world. She just consumed it. Being with her was like drinking a sugary, mass-produced soda after years of drinking only complex, dry reds. It was a rush of glucose to the brain. I told myself it was just a palate cleanser, a way to reset my sensors so I could appreciate Camille again. I need this contrast, I rationalized. I need the noise to appreciate the silence. The first time I slept with her, it was messy and frantic in the back of her car. It smelled of mildew and stale air. It was repulsive and exhilarating. I felt a dirty, vibrating thrill, the thrill of contamination. I was introducing a foreign agent into the sterile lab of my marriage. EV. The diffusion. Living a double life is an exercise in chemical separation. You have to keep the volatile compounds apart, or they will react and explode. I became obsessive about hygiene. I was a sommelier. I knew how smells clung. I scrubbed my skin with unscented soap until it was red. I kept a spare set of clothes in my trunk, sealed in a vacuum bag. I brushed my teeth 3 times before entering the house. But the lies were harder to wash off. They coated my tongue like tannins. The tasting ran late. I had to organize the cellar inventory. I'm just tired, Cam. It's the sulfites. I would lie next to Camille in the dark, holding my breath, terrified that my pores would betray me. She was a woman who could detect a single drop of jasmine in a vat of rose oil. I felt like I was smuggling a bomb through airport security. The guilt was a sharp, metallic taste in my mouth. But strange as it sounds, the guilt made me more attentive. I bought her flowers, unscented lilies, her favorite. I listened to her talk about molecular weights. I was performing the role of the husband better than I had in years, fueled by the terrifying energy of deceit. I was a fake diamond, shining brighter than the real one. V. The headspace analysis. The discovery was quiet. There was no shouting, no scenic confrontation. It was a matter of chemistry. I came home one Tuesday night, fresh from a shower at the gym, wearing clothes I had just picked up from the dry cleaner. I was confident. I was clean. Camille was sitting at the dining table. The lights were dimmed. She wasn't working. She was sitting with her hands folded in front of her, looking at a single wine glass filled with water. "Hey," I said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. She didn't pull away, but she didn't lean in. She froze. Then she inhaled, a short, sharp intake of breath. "You changed your soap," she said. "What?" "No, I use the same stuff at the gym." "No," she whispered. She turned to look at me, and her eyes were dark, dilated pools of knowledge. "I don't smell the soap, Julian. I smell the absence of it. You've scrubbed too hard. You smell like emptiness. You smell like you're trying to hide something." She stood up and walked closer to me. She leaned in, near my neck, not to kiss, but to analyze. "And underneath that," she said, her voice trembling, "there is something sweet. Vanilla. Cheap vanilla. And menthol?" I took a step back, hitting the counter. "Camille, you're imagining things." "I never imagined scents," she said, her voice cutting like glass. "I can smell her, Julian. She's on your skin. She's seeped into your pores. You've been marinating in her." She looked at me with a look of pure scientific revulsion. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was professional disgust. I was a tainted sample. I was a bottle of wine that had turned to vinegar, irreversible, spoiled, and unfit for consumption. "Who is she?" she asked. "It doesn't matter," I choked out. "It matters," she said, backing away. "Because you brought her into my house. You brought that cheap synthetic stench into our life. You've contaminated the formula." 6. The evaporation. I live in a hotel now. The air is conditioned and smells of industrial cleaner and dust. It is the smell of transient spaces, of people passing through without leaving a mark. Ro and I ended immediately. The moment the secret was out, the palate cleanser tasted sickeningly sweet. I realized I didn't want the cheap soda. I had just been thirsty. I went back to the house yesterday to collect the last of my wine collection. Camille wasn't there. She had hired movers to pack my things. The house was stripped of my presence. I walked into the bedroom. The air was still. It smelled faintly of cedar wood and amber, her scent. It hit me in the gut, a visceral, physical blow. I realized then that a memory is just a chemical reaction in the brain triggered by a sense. And I had destroyed the trigger. I had taken the most beautiful, complex fragrance of my life, a scent that took 12 years to mature, and I had poured it down the drain for a quick hit of sugar. I stood in the center of the room, inhaling deeply, trying to catch one last note of the bass. But it was fading. The top notes were gone, the heart notes were evaporating, and soon there would be nothing left but the sterile, odorless silence of a room where no one lives anymore.